Introduction. Have you ever pondered why, despite widespread international criticism, the United States remains steadfast in its support for Israel? It appears that the bond between America and Israel rivals the epic romances of history, akin to the storied tales of Layla Majnun and Romeo and Juliet. This narrative seeks to unravel the complex chronology and interplay of socio-political factors that have sewn these countries together. The initial conflict, the rocky relationship between Jews and Christians, did not always parallel the friendship we see today between America and Israel. This story, rich with tumult and transformation, finds its beginnings in an unexpected epoch. Roman times. Some 2,000 years ago, the Jews lived as an oppressed people under Roman rule in their homeland, Palestine. The Roman Empire, an indomitable superpower of its time, brutally subjugated the Jewish people, relegating them to conditions akin to slavery. The Jewish scholars, bearing the brunt of these hardships, turned to their storied prophecies. They believed that the signs foretold in the Torah were manifest and that the arrival of the Messiah was imminent. The expectation that this Messiah would herald an era of Jewish preeminence. Enter Jesus. Yes, their hopes, however, found a surprising interruption in Jesus, who instead of praising, vociferously criticized the religious scholars for straying from the true path. Instead of the Christ they imagined, they found one who held a mirror to their transgressions. This incited vehement animosity between Jesus and the Jewish leaders. The crucifixion conspiracy. As Jesus' following grew, so did the opposition. The Jewish scholars, chafed by his criticisms, colluded with the Romans to bring about his death sentence. Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor, was caught in a political web and yielded, though he confined his conscience by placing the blame squarely upon the Jews, proclaiming his blood shall be on your hands. In retort, the Jews proclaimed, let his blood be on us and our children, marking a violent fervor that resulted in a concerted outrage. While Jesus survived beyond the cross by divine decree, the Jews did not find the respite they had desired. Roman retaliation and forced diaspora. In the aftermath of Jesus' era, relations continued to deteriorate, climaxing in a war between the Jews and Romans. The outcome was devastating. The Romans devastated Jerusalem, scorched the Second Temple, and scattered the Jewish population from Palestine. This enforced diaspora scattered them in all directions. Returned during the Islamic era, the vacuous hope of returning to their sacred land long simmered until an unexpected development, the emergence of Islam. With the advent of Caliph Umar ibn Khattab, Muslims challenged the hegemony of the Romans and embraced control over Jerusalem. Upon surrender, the Roman Christians impelled Umar to restrict Jewish return. However, Umar, with wisdom distinct to the new Islamic ethos, rejected this plea. He allowed for the repatriation of Jews, thus initiating a 400-year era of relatively harmonious Muslim-Jewish relations, united by their common dispiritment towards Christians. Conclusion. The intricate dance of history reveals cyclical animosities and alliances, illustrating the ever-evolving geotemporal bonds that pivot more on political tides than immutable cultural legacies. In the year 1095, Pope Urban II heralded an era that would be etched into the annals of history. The Crusades, a series of religious wars with the principal aim of reclaiming Jerusalem. For 400 years, Christians have been yearning for the Holy Lands, and under Pope Urban's call, they marched into a terrain teeming with religious significance, yet marred by conflict, eager to recapture the city revered by Christians, Muslims, and Jews alike. The landscape of the Muslim world, distracted by internal discord among its rulers, found itself unable to mount a cohesive defense against the Crusaders. Spurred by religious fervor and a yearning for conquest, the Christian knights stormed the holy city, their zeal morphing into a massacre that saw the sanctity of the Al-Aqsa Mosque shattered with the bodies of fallen Muslim defenders. The Crusaders also directed their wrath at the Jewish inhabitants, razing synagogues and burning temples, leaving a darkened trail of destruction and bloodshed. Fast forward 90 years, in the heart of the 12th century, a new beacon emerged from the Muslim ranks, Salahuddin Ayyubi, known to the West as Saladin. A strategic and compassionate leader, Saladin rallied the fragmented Muslim realms under his banner, launching a valley-wide campaign to reclaim the sacred lands lost to the Crusaders. His call for unity extended to the Jews, who, having borne the brunt of Christian aggression, saw in Saladin a warrior worthy of their support. Among those who joined his cause was the esteemed Jewish philosopher and healer, Maimonides, who served as his personal physician. Under the astute leadership of Saladin, victories were sealed, and an era of harmony was forged, not just within the bounds of Palestine, but throughout the vast stretches where the Muslim rule extended. Jews and Muslims cohabited peacefully, forming communities that transcended religious barriers, laying the groundwork for the prosperous Jewish enclaves in Al-Andalus, Muslim Spain. Spain burgeoned as a bastion of Jewish life under the auspices of Muslim rule for 800 years. The winds of change blew in the late 15th century, when Christian forces seized control of the Iberian Peninsula in a fervid wave of reconquest. Jews and Muslims faced a harrowing ultimatum: convert to Christianity or face exile. Many, steadfast in their faith, chose the latter. Amidst their displacement, hope beckoned from the east. The Ottoman Sultan Bayezid extended an invitation, welcoming Jews and Muslims to the Ottoman Empire, offering sanctuary and the promise of inclusion within his realm. Yet, centuries later, the question looms: what orchestrated the seeming reversal in alliances? Why did Jews who had coexisted peacefully with Muslims align with Christians? The narrative of Jewish immigration and the founding of Israel is steeped in historical context, driven by Zionism and its varied influences and allies. At a time when Jewish communities were flourishing across Europe, a powerful undercurrent of Zionism began to take root. This sentiment emerged from the historical yearning to return to the land of their ancestors, from which they had been expelled some 2 millennia ago. The dream was not born out of an idealistic quirk, but a new understanding that strength could convert dreams into reality. Quietly, the Zionists began their endeavor to reclaim the land of Palestine. This was not an easy task. Often the lands were purchased at significant prices. However, money was found, notably with the assistance of influential families like the Rothschilds, who had the means and belief in the cause. The acquired lands were not the promised lands as they would seem to many. They were barren and seemingly inhospitable, yet were the canvas upon which future hopes were drawn. One of the landmark purchases under this silent Zionist movement was a Huzit Bayit, which would flourish into what is now Tel Aviv, a testament to the persistence and ingenuity of the Jewish people. While Zionism was unfolding in Europe, across the ocean, a different but crucial parallel movement was forming. American evangelical Christians began perceiving a rebirth of Jewish nationalism as a necessary precursor to the second coming of Christ. This was heavily influenced by the early 20th century bestseller, Jesus is Coming, which suggested that the formation of a Jewish state in Palestine was a divine requirement. Theodor Herzl emerged as the charismatic architect of modern political Zionism. He famously predicted the creation of a Jewish state within 50 years, a prognostication that was strikingly realized with the birth of Israel 50 years later. Herzl's efforts extended to negotiations with global empires, He made propositions to the Ottomans to alleviate their debts in exchange for granting a Jewish homeland in Palestine, an offer rebuffed by Sultan Abdulhamid. Yet the Zionists remained undeterred, turning their aspirations towards the British Empire. Proposing alternatives like Uganda were floated but never seriously considered. Palestine remained the singular target. The tide turned significantly during World War I. The conflicts reshaped empires and allegiances, providing an opening for Zionist aspirations. The British government's Balfour Declaration in 1917, aligned with Rothschild interests, pledged support for a Jewish homeland, even as the Jewish population in Palestine was still a minority. The horrors of the Holocaust underscored the urgent necessity for a Jewish refuge. As Hitler's brutal policies ravaged the European Jewish populace, many sought safety in Palestine, swelling the Jewish demographic to a notable 30% by World War II's close. The post-war era saw the waning British Empire unburden itself of the Palestinian dilemma by handing it over to the United Nations. The UN proposed a controversial partition plan that disproportionately favored the Jewish minority. Yet Israel's Declaration of Independence, championed by David Ben-Gurion in 1948 under a portrait of Herzl, was swiftly acknowledged by world powers like the United States and the USSR, with the notable exception of Reza Shah's Iran being the sole Muslim nation to offer recognition.